Hi, my name is David, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm living my life in recovery now, and it just opens my mind up like crazy. So, now we're at the start of the sixth beatitude. So, let's go. This sixth beatitude sort of summarizes just how far the first five have taken us. And for that purpose, it seems so short and simple. It goes, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." Seems simple, right? But let me tell you up front, you really want to watch this video all the way through. It's a mind blower what we find in this short beatitude. So to start, let's dig into the original meanings of a few of the words. In the original Greek, the word that we translate now as pure is the word katharos. It comes from the same root word as our word catharsis does. So it means like a purging or becoming pure. But specifically, it also means to be cleansed by fire or that which is purified by pruning, like we would prune a twig. So let's look at how this goes for anyone who's been sincere in responding to these Beatitudes in order to become a more virtuous person. A person not only of external purity of behavior, but in addition, a person of internal purity of the spirit and of purity in our intentions. It recognizes that we can reach a threshold where we've made some great improvements, but because we're human, it makes sense that we don't reach that point and then just automatically stay there. We're going to still feel the jab of resentments, that quick outburst of anger, the pangs of jealousy, the burn of envy, and our burden of hurt pride. So for me in AA, this takes me to our 10th step, where we continue to take our personal inventory and we admit our mistakes. To play on the original Greek word, addressing our mistakes is like continuing to prune away the dead wood of our character defects. See, prune that away. Does that make sense? To quote the 12 and 12, quote, "Learning to spot and correct these flaws is the essence of character building." In fact, in my opinion, this chapter and that book, 12 and 12, is terrific on this topic. And you'll find it, chapter 10, page 88. If you haven't read it recently, you might just go back and hit it again. But okay, let's move on to the topic of metaphor, because a lot of the message of this beatitude is conveyed through metaphor. To begin with, the word heart is clearly, it's not about our physical heart. It's a metaphor for the quality of our character as reflected in our intentions and also in our behavior. Now, if we've made progress by paying attention to the first 5 Beatitudes, we're at the point in this great, grand metaphor where we have become meek. We've become meek. Now remember how we translated that term meek in the 3rd Beatitude? It doesn't mean a shrinking, violent kind of person. It means a strong, loyal, workmanlike person. We described it in metaphorical terms as one who tends to the land. So we're at a point where we can look at ourselves as being like those who tend or maintain the care of a bit of spiritual land. And in the metaphor, our own spirit that's the land we're tending to. Is that clear? I mean, can you see how that works? And we do this by continually pruning away the dead wood of our character defects per the 10th step. And this leads us to a critical insight into the scope of this great metaphor. Listen to it as those who were there for the first time at the Sermon on the Mount, who would have heard it, because we find ourselves in this metaphorical land of the soul that we are tending, where we can see that land as a domesticated land, like a garden or a vineyard or a fruitful olive tree grove. We've shaped it, and we've planted it, and we've pruned it, and we've harvested its fruits. Land that is not domesticated, by the way, in the Bible, is always symbolized as a desert or any kind of land that's barren or blighted. Land that man has domesticated and improved is seen as a garden. And the primary iconic image of a garden in the biblical story is, of course, it's the Garden of Eden, the original home that God intended as a home for man, for a little man whom he had created in his own image and likeness. Now, I know we may seem to be stretching this metaphor here, but this is the story of God and his creation as told along metaphorical lines in the Bible. Hell, it's a metaphorical story. The only real way you could tell a spiritual story is through the use of metaphor. And this metaphorical landscape is the landscape that would have just leapt into the minds of Jesus' listeners there in that Sermon on the Mount. Because using metaphors like this, these types of metaphors were fundamental to the Jewish traditions. So now, keep going with me here, because it gets even more amazing. The Beatitude says that the pure will see God. Well, we only see God as a genuine character in two places in the entire Bible. One is in the Garden of Eden, where God literally walks and talks with Adam and Eve before the fall. They chat, they hang out together till the fall. Then the other is a rather strange but powerful sort of partial appearance to Moses, way up on top of Mount Sinai in the book of Exodus. It's where he gets the 10 Commandments and the Mosaic Law. But that's it. There's only these two times that we actually physically see God in the whole Bible. Yet here, in the Sermon on the Mount, we have Jesus himself preaching this beatitude and telling his listeners that the pure in heart shall see God. Now, in that day and time, and given the power of Jewish tradition, this would have been a vivid, a startling, like a thunderclap of a statement for those people to hear. It would be like, wait a minute, you hold it right there. You mean we'll actually get to see God? We're going to see God like Adam and Eve did? It would have been that stunning to the folks in that crowd. So now from here, let me take our discussion to its final great metaphorical conclusion. The Garden of Eden itself shows up in just two places in the Bible. It's in the book of Genesis, at the very start of the very first book of the Bible. In other words, it's at the very, very beginning. And then the other time, it shows up in the closing verses of the book of Revelation, which is there at the very, very end of the Bible. Just those two times. So we can say that this phrase about seeing God sort of bookends the entire scope of the biblical story, which runs from the story of Genesis, the fall of man, all the trials of the Old Testament, the redemption to come as the mission of Jesus Christ, and the end of life here on earth in Revelation, which leads to the beginning of the new life in God's true kingdom. I'm almost out of breath. All of that we find right here in this simple little phrase. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So, if we go back now and reflect again on our 10th step, where we keep checking ourselves for defects of character, do our daily inventory, and then we get those defects and we prune them away, doesn't it seem like one hell of a lot bigger deal after what we've gone through here than it seemed just a few minutes ago, now that we've considered the awesome scope of what's expressed in this Beatitude? Speaking for myself, I got to say, as my spiritual journey continues, I can only hope and pray for a spiritual awakening of my own, like some of the folks who first heard these words, like these people must have experienced. And now I'm being serious. Must have been crazy. Well, now in the 2 remaining Beatitudes, we venture out into society, and we hear how our character should interact and be defined in that arena by our intentions as well as by our actions. So I'll see you then, and thanks so much for listening today.